can't tell you what a pleasure it is to welcome all of you tonight, and just to have this number of people here at this turnout is just fantastic. My name is Valerie Gardner, and I am the superintendent of Upper Lake Elementary School District, and I'm the principal at the elementary school. For 25 years I've been in education, and for 25 years I've seen a lot of different students with a lot of different needs. But one of the growing areas has been in autism. In fact, I think probably starting about 10 years ago was when, I come from Humboldt County, when we started having more and more autistic students in our classrooms. And as an administrator, it's a different perspective because you're looking at families and trying to answer questions to help them make sure that they're getting their students' needs met. You're working with teachers trying to help them understand how to best serve students. And you're trying to help students make their way through the educational world. And it's been a very interesting and a very rewarding process. When I moved down here, though, I was incredibly pleased to meet Hank. Because, well, Hank and I both are musicians, so that was a nice connection that we had. But also, I learned very quickly that I could rely on Hank to be a real resource to our autistic students at our school because of the fact that Hank's son is autistic. And the more conversations we've had about his son, who is an incredible young man, and the kind of experiences that he's had, I realized how unique it was. That we have an educator who's also a parent, and we have a child that truly can speak and help us even understand more about autism. When I learned that he was in the process of trying to get a book published that he had written, and was privileged to be able to read that book called Sticks and Stones, I knew right away that I was hoping that I could talk him into doing an event like this, because this is going to give each of you an opportunity to see that role that an educator and a parent and a child have in trying to navigate their way through autism. So what I wanted to do is read just a little poem that came from the book that I read the manuscript to. I'm not a poet, so I've not read a lot of poetry, but this poem really touched me because I think that it really gives you that. And for any of you that have autistic children, I think it's one that you can relate to. It's called Drifting. And it was written, I believe, for Ian, right? Yeah. And this book, he can tell you a little bit more about that book. But it says, I feel as though you're drifting away, a sprite unfair. Here on this side, normal, and all that is thought to be right and good. And over there, autism. Feared, shunned, and misunderstood. But then I realized you were there all along, waiting, and that it's me who is drifting towards acceptance. So I'm really pleased, and I want you all to make a very good welcome.
Okay, I have to say, this is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I teach kindergarten, and I can stand up in front of the kindergartners all day and make a fool of myself, but so I need you guys to do something for me. You can either smile very encouragingly the whole evening at me, I can kind of see you. It's either that or I'm going to have to do that speech trick and picture you all in your underwear. So, you know, whatever works, but that's terrifying. This all came about, as Valerie said, we've been talking a lot. At the beginning of the school year, Temple Grandin, I'm sure probably most of you have heard of Temple Grandin. She's autistic. She works in the veterinary sciences, and she was speaking down in Palo Alto and asked Valerie if I could go see her. And Valerie said, sure, if you wouldn't mind presenting back to our staff, you know, what you've learned. And I said, oh, okay, public speaking is my forte, but yeah, okay, I can handle that one. I kind of think this is blown a little bit more, because I'm pretty sure most of you aren't part of my school staff. So, seeing Temple Grandin my wife Michelle and I have talked a lot about tonight, and for us, when Ian was little, to have an evening like this would have been pretty incredible. But you know, just to see somebody that's kind of gone through it. Back when Ian was born, we didn't know any autistic kids. And in fact, raise your hand if you know somebody who's autistic. So, I mean, look around. I mean, times have changed. My version, I guess, of tonight was, I was driving to school one day and I was listening to my public radio station, and Temple Grandin happened to be interviewed, and I'd never heard of her. I can't, it was amazing hearing somebody who was autistic, but so eloquent and successful. It was, oh my gosh, you know, there's hope. I heard that it was probably one of the parents of autistic kids. I'm sure you know those dark times that we go through. This was one of the dark times, and to hear her really gave me hope. That day, seeing her live was just amazing. You know, hearing her speak, and the best part of the day, they had booths around, and you know, selling books and stuff. And there was a memoir that Temple Grandin's mother had written. I was reading the introduction, and I was starting to get choked up, and I thought, oh, I better put this down, or I'm going to embarrass myself. And you know, you kind of sense that somebody's watching you, and I looked over, and Temple Grandin was standing there. And I was flustered, and I said, this is beautiful, you know, and I said, your mom's still alive. And we ended up having a really nice conversation. Parents, she is so autistic, it was wonderful. You could almost see the social stories going in her head as we talked. It was when you get a chance to see her, you need to do it. Anyway, so back to tonight. We've never done anything like this before, so, and I had no idea what kind of an audience we'd have. So raise your hand if you are a parent of an autistic child. Okay, cool, Chan. There's a teacher, you put your hand up. How many of you are educators? Wow, cool. Okay, put your hand up. Do people just here for interest? Okay, a few. What about people who work with autistic kids in other professions? Okay. And how about people on the spectrum? Be brave. You're in the most supportive group you probably ever could be in. Great. So, I'm scared, so keep smiling. Okay? I'm doing the underwork, I'm serious. Ian was born almost exactly 21 years ago. March 6th will be his 21st birthday. That day was amazing. Michelle and I we're both teachers. We're getting ready for school, and I'm in the shower, and Michelle says, Hank, I think my water just broke. Ian was our first, okay? We'd had dogs as baby warm-ups. And our childbirth class, they said, well, you need to smell the water to make sure that that's what it is. That's true, but so here Michelle and I are on our hands and knees in the bathroom, sniffing at this life-changing puddle and pushing the dogs out of the way. So we called the doctor, and he says, you know, relax. Chances are it's going to be hours and hours yet. Those of you who know Michelle won't be surprised at her next response. She said, "Can I go to work?" And so here I find myself an hour later in front of my class. Actually, I was in front of my kindergarten parents because we were doing a performance that day. And an hour or so into the day, the phone rang, and Ian was coming. So I flew. He was born at Redwood Hospital, and here I am in Upper Lake. I flew. People in Lake County do not pull over if you honk your horn. I barely made it. I mean, I barely made it. Greg Mux, her principal, I'll never forget the expression on his face when I walked into that delivery room, because I think he was pushing up his sleeves and getting ready to find out more about the kindergarten teacher than he ever really wanted to know. So, anyway, amazing day. You know, hindsight is great. The signs were all there, but again, back then, Michelle and I are both educators. Our training, what we learned about autism in school was kids sitting in a corner, completely cut off from the world, rocking back and forth. The knowledge just wasn't there like it is now. Ian is very much, I kind of picture this autistic wave, and he was kind of the crest of that wave. And the first thing that we noticed was a pretty severe language delay. And later we learned that it was, more severe than that. But he, we asked, and we went to the doctor for advice, and people basically said, just give him time. Again, autism was not on that radar back then. And there are other things. The textures. I'd forgotten until I was writing this speech. He hated the feel of his sweatpants against his skin, so he wears sweatpants inside out. All these things are just so, autistic, and back then we just didn't know that. The way he would play with toys. His favorite toy was the washing machine. He figured out how to, push a stool over there and open up the lid and hold down that sensor button so that he could watch the color swirl. The vacuum cleaner, he was he was good at it. We had wonderful clean floors for a long time. Unfortunately, that phase died out. And even the normal toys that he played with in a very ritualistic kind of way, and with set outcomes. We had a Fisher-Price basketball hoop, and he would just obsessively shoot hoops, just obsessively. And a little toy truck, this green truck, we had a very ritualized game that we would play with this truck. It wasn't normal play. The signs were there, but we just didn't have the information to pick up on them. As Michelle says, overall, he was just that square peg in a round hole. In preschool, I kind of lumped preschool and kindergarten together because both of those environments were so sheltered and so safe for him. Preschool, he didn't really interact with the other kids. There was a lot of that parallel play. Any texture stuff, finger paint, what's that stuff called GAC and other gooey stuff. He wanted nothing to do with that. His preschool teacher, she was wonderful, but it was her very first year teaching. And like the rest of us, autism wasn't on her radar. She had, I think, 6 boys in that class, and she accepted Ian completely and totally for who he was. He did great, but he was very sheltered, and he was very sheltered. Kindergarten, we joke around about how that year he had his 3 moms for teachers. This was at Lower Lake Elementary School. Ian went throughout his schooling in the Connaught District. Back then, it was a split day kindergarten. There was a morning and an afternoon class in the same classroom. The morning teacher, after she would finish her class, she would help out the afternoon teacher as an aide, and vice versa. The afternoon teacher would help out the morning teacher. As well, we signed Ian up for the morning program, and his teacher was a close family friend who'd known Ian from birth. The afternoon teacher, and I should say afternoon teachers, because it was a job share situation, one of the afternoon teachers was his mom, Michelle. And the other one was another close family friend who had known him from birth. Very, very sheltered environment. First grade is where things fell apart. Ian had been having rages for a long time, and they were starting to spill over into school. One day Ian threw a chair at his first grade teacher, and that was it. He ended up in the special day class at Lower Lake Elementary, and it sounds strange to say it, but throwing that chair was probably one of the best things that could have ever happened, because that chair led us to Patty Langston.
Where's the light?
I'll take my pants off if you want.
Patty is, and I saw some heads nod. Patty Langston is an amazing, amazing teacher. Back then, she was the special ed teacher for the K-3. And she is the first person to suggest autism to us. And she gently led us to the path that we're still walking to this day. Those years at Clover Lake Elementary were definitely the dark time. But Patty had that whole school on board. If an adult that didn't know what to do in a given situation, oh my gosh, they knew exactly who to call. And that feeling permeated down even to the kids. I remember picking Ian up early one day, and we were walking out, and past this little girl, I'd never seen her before, and she said, "Ian, I heard you had a good day today. Great job." We had this bus. It was a squishy bus that Patty would give him when Ian was starting to lose it, and we still have the remains of that thing somewhere. But in class one day, Ian was, on edge, and this little girl stood up. "Ian needs his bus! Ian needs his bus! Where's his bus? It was, she had everybody on board. It was great. I'm going to be talking about a lot of difficult things tonight, and you guys know that Ian is here, and he's going to be speaking later. Ian knows all this, and it's fine, so don't be concerned. Okay? Our first attempt at getting a diagnosis consisted of a half hour, if that, visit with a psychologist in his office. And we insisted on a home visit and got the diagnosis, the proper diagnosis. The original diagnosis was ADHD, you just need to give him meds. Parents, if I can tell you anything, be persistent and trust your gut. Back then, as I said, radar just wasn't on that, or autism just wasn't on that radar. There weren't the therapies that there are now. Walking around that Temple Grandin lecture, all the stuff that's available nowadays, there wasn't anything then. We took every suggestion Patty had, and we made up the rest. We discovered very early on how vital it was for Ian to have strict routines. Routines. One of the best descriptions I've ever heard of autism is, and this is to varying degrees, but if I stop right now and everybody's quiet for just a second. Okay, I'm hearing a buzz over there. I'm hearing these annoying lights, people rustling. I'm very aware, if I really think about it, my feet on the floor. I'm sure you're very aware of your butts in those cold metal chairs. We filter all that out. To varying degrees, autistic people can't. And the world can be a very overwhelming place. And structure gives them a sense of control over what can be a very overwhelming world. We had certain ways that we drove to school, we had certain ways that we drove home, we had certain ways that we needed to say things. Ian's school day was very structured. He had something called a picture schedule. Patty had all the kids on it with a picture schedule. They're very common nowadays. I use the picture schedule with my non-autistic kids just as a group, but it's essentially a folder with literally pictures of the child's day. And and so that they can see what is going to be, what is going to happen, and it gives them that structure that they need. They're vital. At home, we didn't use a picture schedule, but Ian's days were very structured. Transitions, Ian, 5 minutes. It just flows out of my mouth like nothing. It was no surprises. You know, Ian, in 5 minutes we're going to do this. Never, Ian, let's get in the car and go. And we learned a lot of this through trial and error. We finally discovered a speech therapist in Santa Rosa who had the expertise to work with Ian. From our house, it's an 1.5-hour drive over the St. Helena Mountain, one way. So it's a 3-hour round trip. We did it twice a week. Hard for the driver, but imagine Ian with that 3-hour trip with an hour in the middle of it of just unbelievably intense work. Deb Swings, the speech therapist, she literally talked about how she was rewiring his brain for language. And Michelle and I were the type of parents who said, our kid is never going to play video games. Within a month, he had his first Game Boy, just to help him through that. My parents were alive at the time, and they drove him on Mondays, and Michelle and I were able to arrange with our school districts that we could leave early on alternate Wednesdays, so she or I would take, share the Wednesdays. Insurance wouldn't cover it. Insurance didn't cover anything. You mentioned the word autism, nothing. Our lives went on credit cards. It was really hard. Ian's rages were getting worse. They began when he was 2, and at 2, it was easy to explain away as the terrible 2s. But the 2s changed to the 3s, and the 3s became the 4s, and finally it was almost as though we were trying to squeeze as much normal life as we could in between the rages. As hard as it was, though, we learned that we had to be consistent with him, and we always had to follow through with what we said, even at the expense of a rage. I don't know how many of you have seen a rage, and all autistic kids are different. Now, some of you that have an autistic child, maybe your child doesn't throw rage. The only way, the only way I can describe a rage is Ian would be gone, and he'd be replaced by a raging, spitting, biting animal. We would have to restrain him to keep him from hurting himself or hurting us. And as we held him down, as we rode out that storm, his thoughts. What happens when he turns 16? Or when he's an adult, when we can't hold him down anymore? As horrible as those rages were, the worst part for me was when Ian would return, looking into his eyes and seeing awareness, and followed by confusion, horror, fear, and then sorrow. You know you've turned a really strange corner in your life when you have somebody training you on how to restrain your child. And Patty did that for us. She did it in a very factual, no-nonsense way. It's definitely a strange corner to turn. As hard as it could be, we took Ian everywhere. We took him grocery shopping, errands, played soccer and basketball for years, despite his non-athletic father. He still does gymnastics. He dances with Michelle in her dance class. But as his rages got worse, we had to begin telling people that that he was autistic. We actually had a psychologist once suggest we print up business cards that said my child was having a rage, and then the flip side with places to go for information. We did that. But the first time we told anybody, he'd thrown a very intense rage at home, and it was the summer, and our windows were open, and our neighbors were out in the yard. We had to say something. The more we did it, though, the easier it got. But there's no denying the fact that taking Ian out in public sometimes was embarrassing and at times frightening. His rages came when he was overwhelmed and when his senses overloaded. And, understanding the reasons for rage is one thing, but dealing with the reality of the rage is another. And there were days when loving Ian was hard. Sometimes it's hard to be around people who don't understand what it's like. People can sympathize. I have friends that are just so supportive and wonderful, but until you've lived it, you don't know what it's like. It's hard sometimes to hear people talk about their lives. My son just got his driver's license, and I'm thinking, wow, can autistics even drive? My daughter just got accepted to college, and thinking, man, I don't even know if we're going to make it through elementary school. How do you explain, friends asking, do you want to go out for a drink after work? And no, because I'm afraid I don't want Michelle to have to deal with the rage alone. Listening to people talk so casually about going out to dinner and a movie. When Michelle and I were able to arrange it, you have no idea how wonderful a quiet meal alone can be. They talk about stress like that breaking up marriages. I think, if anything, Ian brought Michelle and I closer. Early on, after those nights where the middle of the bed is like this vast wasteland because you're each on your own side afraid to touch. After too many nights of that, we realized that much of what we were arguing about was really the stress of Ian. And we became pretty good in the middle of a fight, yelling at each other, of literally just grabbing onto each other and just kind of holding on. But it wasn't just Michelle and I and Ian who were going through it. We have a beautiful daughter, Kaylee. She's 2.5 years younger than Ian. Imagine a sweet, innocent 3-year-old witnessing a rage. I'll never forget Ian thrown. It was a really bad one. I was tired, I was scared, I was angry, and I took it out on Kaylee. And I yelled at her to get out. And she ran off. And when the rage was over, I went to find her. She was sitting there playing with some toys. Her eyes were huge. I'm sorry doesn't even come close to what needed to be said. There just weren't words to say what needed to be said. I just kind of held her on my lap. Just breathed in her normalcy. But she made it through the other end with all of us. She has grown to a wonderfully caring, open, and accepting young woman. And I think in large part, it's because of Ian and what we experienced. This is heavy stuff, I'm sorry. Even in the very depths of it, the absolute depths of it, there was always something about Ian, just this magic. I have no words to describe what that is. But even in that strict routine and that ritual, we had this game that we would play on Saturday nights called Rough. Okay, and it was strict routine. Saturday nights, Rough could never happen any other night. It was Saturday night. It was always after dinner. And I'd have to start with these exact words. Ian, you don't come charging up here when I say it. I'd say, so, you want to play Rough? And it was just, we'd destroy the house. It was wonderful. And and probably knowing Ian, it was the exact same amount of time every time. It came to the point where it was get mommy. And Michelle, the poor woman, she knew exactly what was coming. She'd be doing the dishes. I know that sounds sexist, but I do all the cooking. She'd be at the sink, and the poor woman, she's been tied up. She's had ice put down her shirt, back pants. She's been locked outside in the rain. Actually, we've both been locked outside in the rain. Wonderful memories. Even in the middle of all that, wonderful memories. Eventually, Kanaka School District hired a new speech teacher. His name was Barry Vibey, and we'd heard wonderful things about him. We were very tired of that drive over to Santa Rosa 2 times a week, and not to mention the expense. And so we gave him a try. Barry was amazing. At that point, Ian had a great foundation built, and Barry just kind of took that and expanded on it. He did a lot of stuff with board games, turn-taking, winning, losing, all that social stuff that's just so vital for autistic kids. But he started pushing at Ian's need for routine. He pushed him right to the edge of a rage, right there. The classroom where he would do this was this weird L shape, and Michelle or I, whoever brought him, would be around the other side of the L, so we couldn't see what was happening, but we could hear. And my stomach is in knots just thinking about it. He'd push him right to that edge, and then bring him back at the last minute. And the next time, he'd push him a little bit farther. And it was amazing. In 4th grade, after 2 years of being in mainstream classrooms with Patty's support, we put him back into the special day class. At that point, the 4th grade classes, the class size was just ridiculous, and he needed to be in a small group. And the teacher of the older kids in the special day class, her name was Lori Chase. At this point, Ian finally was able, he had control, or learning control of his challenges, and he was able to finally start learning the academics. He was way behind at that point. But Lori introduced him to math, and good Lord, the kid has never looked back. But one day we were having a conference with Lori, and she mentioned, and I remember it as almost offhand, and I can't believe she would have, but she said, Ian's learning to control his rages better. And we went home that night, and I'm sitting there with Michelle with a glass of wine, I'm thinking, I can't remember when Ian's last rage was. I can't remember when it happened. And it was just sort of like that. They just sort of kind of gradually drifted away, and they kind of dissolved in the memory. We were terrified about junior high. Ian was moving away from mom's school. He was moving away from Patty. It was a great experience. A wonderful teacher there, Babette Wellick. She took him under her wing. Every school Ian has been through, there's always been that person there. Obviously Patty. Poor Patty. Patty's with us still. I mean, we've bled that poor woman dry. In middle school is Ms. Wellick. I'll get to high school in a minute. It was wonderful. Ian was, again, he was exposed to more sports. He was on a flag football team. He wrestled. It was this whole new world. He did great. Then came high school. Again, we were really worried. Way bigger school, more academics, a bunch of kids who didn't know him. Patty, for once in Lake County, the first day of school for all of us was the same day. It never happens. It happened that day. So Michelle or I, we weren't able to take him for his first day. Patty did that for us, so she's with us still. High school was wonderful. He continued to excel in math. He discovered the choir. He made it into a show choir. which is like a touring group. He did cross country, he did drama. It was wonderful. Yeah, the only real challenge was language arts. Ian will always struggle with language arts. And when I have Ian up here, we were talking about this the other day, he puts it into words beautifully why it's language arts is a struggle for him. And I'll let him do that when we get up here. I've lost track of the countless hours we spent reading with him and helping him write his papers. But we couldn't have made it through high school without a woman named Marlena Leister. She was his rock through high school. She taught what was called his support class. He was in regular classes, and then he had one period what was called support, and it was just basically extra help with whatever he was struggling in. Clearly that was language arts. You know, I'm going to put on my teacher hat for a minute here. There's so much teacher bashing that goes on. I just want to pick up people like Marlena and Babette Wellick and Lori and Patty. So selfless and dedicated and just wonderful people. Anyway, the day Ian graduated from high school was probably one of the proudest days of my life. Watching him walk across that stage to get his diploma, Michelle and I and all the wonderful people that were there to support him, we all knew how hard he worked and how brave he was to take those steps. It was wonderful. Ian was elected, I don't know if there's a word for it, the guy that moves the tassel guy, when they graduate. Ian was tassel guy. And so he was supposed to get up on the stage, and he forgot. And he'd gone down, and he was down there greeting his public. And Michelle and I are trying to get his attention. Ian, he's completely oblivious. The principal finally came over the speaker. Ian? Ian took 3 minutes. Ian, we need you up on the stage. It was a beautiful end to public school. It was wonderful. College is a whole new world. He's in his 2nd year of junior college. Parents of autistic kids, IEPs are out the window in college. Ian is very much on his own. He's still excelling in math. The stuff he brings home is like a foreign language. And he's still struggling in language arts. Parents, there's no such thing as reduced assignments in college. All the kids are expected to do the exact same work. I get that, but I absolutely believe, this may sound a little odd, but I really think that autism is actually another form of intelligence, albeit a very challenging and misunderstood one. But these kids have so much to offer us. They have such a unique vision of the world. It would be a shame if his autism finally stops him here. I really think that we as a society, we need to take a really good look at how we plan to educate these kids, because they are coming, and it would be a crime to miss out on what they have to offer. So, I'm almost done here. I'm going to put on my teacher hat for a second again. My parent hat is, well, as a teacher, my parent hat is always right close, but teacher hat's on now. I don't know how many of you know me. I teach kindergarten in the morning, and I teach music and band in the afternoon, which gives me, I work with all the kids in the entire school. It's wonderful. These kids, these autistic kids that I am fortunate enough to work with are wonderful. But parents, I'm going to be brutally honest with you right now, okay? As a teacher, when we see that we're getting an autistic kid in our class, we take a breath, because we know that it's going to be a challenging year. Having an autistic kid, having a special needs child in our class is a huge challenge. But I think I can speak for other teachers in the room and say that while it's a huge challenge, it is incredibly rewarding. I sometimes think these kids teach me way more than I ever teach them. I had a kid the other day in one of my music classes. He's a Michael Jackson fanatic, and he's been begging me to let him play the Michael Jackson CD. I put that on, and this kid did this entire dance routine. It was absolute, the look on his face, he was glowing, and his class, they were just amazed. They were in a circle around him, and they're trying to follow along. It was wonderful. I have another boy who I've had him since kindergarten. He's obsessed with my leg, my hairy leg. And he always sits in the front row, and God bless him, he rolls up my leg, and I could start to drool and nod off right now. Another boy, a teacher came to me just this last week, I think it was. This little boy, he's out in the audience tonight. He said to his teacher, "You look beautiful today." You get that from an autistic kid. They say what they mean. There is no hidden agenda. You know, that is an absolute outstanding compliment. And it's great. These kids change us as teachers. But it's challenging and it's hard work. Parents, please, please try to remember that we have at least 24 other kids in our class, and some of them have special needs as well, and we're equally responsible for all of them. Please remember that we're human. We get tired, we get frustrated, sometimes we say stupid things. I'm pretty good at saying stupid things sometimes. But please treat us as partners. You live with your child at home, but we live with your child here at school. And each of us has valuable information to share with the other. We need to be a team. Teachers, I feel like I'm teachers. Even though these behaviors seem willful, like this kid's pushing every button you have just to see how far out your eyes will bulge, they're for the most part, they're not. Sometimes they are, but for the most part, they're not. These kids are frequently overwhelmed by what to us seems insignificant. They're incredibly literal. Don't jump off that chair does not necessarily mean that it's not okay to jump off that chair. And they're going to be an incredible amount of work. You have to be drudgingly consistent. But you still have to push them and challenge them, even at the risk of a rage. These kids are going to exhaust you, they're going to infuriate you, they're going to irritate you, they're going to push buttons you never knew you had, but they're also going to love you, they're going to try desperately to please you, they're going to inspire you, they're going to amaze you, they're going to change you forever. And upper grade teachers, they're coming, so be ready. IEPs, I'm almost done here, guys. IEPs, it's a whole separate section here. I've sat on both sides of that IEP table as a parent and a teacher. Parents, ask questions if you don't understand something. Please. We teachers, we're terrible about using teacher speak. I kind of think it's because we spend all day with kids, and when we finally get to be around adults, we want to show off all the big words we know. Please ask questions if you don't understand something. Trust your gut. You live with your child, and if your gut is telling you that you should say something in a meeting, even if you think it sounds dumb or doesn't sound like it's going to be important, please say it. Because frequently those are the keys that, oh, wow, the turning points. Teachers, even though I think for most of us IEPs are at the end of the day and you're tired, I've sat as a parent at what is discussed in an IEP is often life-changing and it's sometimes frightening. And it's always hugely important. So teachers somehow find the energy somewhere to be present at that meeting. Pretend it's your child being discussed. Drink 9 cups of coffee. Don't use teacher speak. And explain an acronym, or acronyms. We're terrible about those. IEP is Individual Education Program, is what that stands for. We're terrible about this. So, in closing, this was billed tonight as the joys and challenges of autism. I hope that the joys have come through, because they are many and they are immense. Ian, here I go again. Ian is the most caring, he's the most open, non-judgmental person you could ever meet. And I think of all the hatred in this world that's caused by people judging each other. Ian is a gentle and innocent soul. And one of my joys right now is watching that childlike soul, innocent soul, change into the innocence of a man. We need that kind of innocence in this world. If somebody handed me a pill right now, for some reason it's a pink pill, I don't know why, and said if this pill is going to cure Ian's autism, I without a doubt would throw it away, because too much would be lost. But he has to live in this world with all its grim realities. And every instinct I have as a parent is to keep Ian close and keep him safe. But my job as a parent is to let him go. And I think perhaps he need to harden his heart just a little, but not too much. He's given me more than I could ever give him, and I'm a better man for having him in my life. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
you remember talking about how you think?
Yeah.
Can you describe thinking in pictures, what that's like?
Well,
if you want to sit there. That's going to be too close. There, right there.
well,
Describe speaking in pictures. What's that? Or I mean, thinking in pictures.
well, the way I think is, I know some of you, like, if you, like, read a book, you, like, think in words or something, isn't that right?
Yeah.
Well, that's not always true. You can also think of, some people, like, think differently. I mean, like me. I mean, I don't tend to think in words, I just think in pictures. Like, for example, like, imagine just reading a book like about a mouse climbing off the clock and then falling down. Like, just play a scene in your head or play a scene in your head like a movie, or take a camera out of your pocket and snap a picture or record a mouse doing that. Doesn't that make sense?
Mm-hmm. When we realized that he did this, we were driving somewhere and he was laughing in the back seat. This was before car TVs. And I said, Ian, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm watching.
It's not just car TVs, there can be like iPads or iPods.
Literally. But the point that he realized, he said, well, I'm watching the Aristocats. And then we realized, no, he's watching the Aristocats. It's pretty amazing. But you talked about how...
Hold on, let me say one more.
It's almost like when you're, like, listening to a song or dancing to a song, it sometimes gets stuck in your head. Well, with me, it can happen either way. I can have a song stuck in my head, or I can have a movie stuck in my head, like a scene, or possibly a whole movie, or half of it, or yada yada yada.
You talked about how, and I thought this was, I've known the kid for 21 years now. But you talked about...
You actually knew me for 10,000.
You talked about how, when you, and I hope you can say this the way you said it the other night, how you can't, it's hard for you reading words to make a picture of that. Remember how you said that?
Yeah, kind of. Sometimes reading a story like in a hard book, or reading like a poem, I just can't picture all that. It just like, I mean, the wind, it's just blows my brain away into a bush.
The way you speak,
which means I can't catch that. I can't get it in my head.
it was interesting the way, because I think we're talking about math, and he was talking about how math is so picture oriented to him, and I guess it kind of is, but words, to turn the words into pictures in his head is difficult, and I thought that was kind of interesting. So, Ian, what's the best part of your autism, do you think? The gifts, or the good things from your autism?
Good things for my autism is, as you guys saw me yo-yoing, that's part of it, and mostly, I mean, I've been yo-yoing for like almost 12 years, and I just saw this Ned performance at my school, and then all of a sudden got interested, and I stayed focused and haven't stopped.
His focus is amazing. I mean, amazing. If I had that focus for my guitar playing, I probably wouldn't be here. It's truly...
Still train your brain to do that. That's how I did it.
You killed off a lot of my brain cells.
I even thought of math to go with, like, the yo-yoing. As you can see, like, the yo-yoing, like, moving around like physics or something.
And he talks about wanting to graph yo-yo. It's amazing.
what about the challenges of the autism? What's the thing you hate the most about the autism?
What I hate most about it is having to like write like a lot of essays and well, a lot of essays or poetry, but don't mind the journaling. I can do or choreographing or something. And that's completely different. But writing essays and writing poems, like in language arts, like he mentioned, there's a lot of figures of speech. There's words like mixing around in your. I don't know how to say this, but like on a piece of paper or in a book or something.
So it sounds to me like you're saying that the whole language arts thing is your autism is what's making that difficult for you, and that's the thing you don't like. Okay.
Yes, and I wouldn't have a problem like just writing like just a couple pages, but if there are like 7 or more, then I just or actually 5 or 4 or more. It's different. It's so difficult. I mean, it would just mess up my brain.
Okay, so a lot of you hear about autistic people that have a hard time doing something like this, being around a lot of people. Are you like that, or
like speaking out in front of people?
Yeah, I mean, is this scaring you as much as it's scaring you?
No, not really. Just because I've actually been performing for a long time, and of course I've been dancing since I was little. And yes, I still do gymnastics. I still dance, but yeah, I got lost interest in basketball and football just because I think it's too ordinary, or am I saying it right? Ordinary or original? Kind of means almost similar ways.
When you have a hard time getting your thoughts out, is that embarrassing for you? Like when you stutter a little bit, or having a hard time finding your words? Is that
maybe a little? Yeah.
The other day, Ian takes the bus to. By the way, autistics do drive. He tries driving license, but he rides just saving gas. He comes to school with me on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then takes the bus up to Mendocino College. So the kids at school know him pretty well. And do you remember that boy who asked you if you were autistic because you were stuttering a little bit? And his brother happens to be autistic.
That was Monday.
Yeah. And
wait a minute. Monday? No, excuse me. That was what I meant to say was it was yesterday.
Right. I liked the way you handled that. You didn't bother you at all. You said, "Yeah, I'm autistic." And
I know autism is another learning style. I mean, everyone learns differently.
Do you have anything else you want to say? Are you ready for questions?
No, I'm ready for questions.
So, if anybody has any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Hi Ian, I'm Linda, and I was wondering, would it be easier for you to draw in pictures than to write a story with words?
Would be easier for me to draw pictures than writing in words?
Yes.
Why don't you come back to my
well, technically, yes.
Writing a paper.
Yeah, I know what you meant. Yes, it would be easier for me to actually draw. It's almost like sketching a graph in math.
That's interesting. I never thought I wish we had one.
You can try to think of math to put work in words. I mean, that's how I do it.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions?
Ian, do you have any acquaintances that are autistic, and how do you communicate with someone?
Do you have any friends that are autistic?
Maybe I think one. Yeah.
And
Or actually, wait, no. I think I have two of them. I mean, one I knew from middle school. He happened to be in special ed, but he's like low functioning. But I tend to help him out a little with his education.
Oh, that's great.
Back when I was no kill, and when I moved on to high school, it was hard.
hard for him, hard for you? What do you mean?
It was hard for me a little, but then when the years pass, he's now in high school and he's in another special ed class, so I sometimes come up and visit him. And my buddy Matt Mayfield, he happened to be he has a little autism inside him, but I think he tends to be smarter than me. Yes?
Do you remember when your parents explained to you about autism, and do you remember any of that, how it was for you?
Like
when you were little?
We told you?
Yeah.
How I was autistic? Well, I didn't know what autistic means at first.
Right. So do you remember how they explained that to you?
Yeah, I do now. Well, I knew it for a while, since high school.
No, but I think she's asking, do you remember when you were first told that you were autistic? Do you remember that conversation?
I think that was way back.
I'll never forget.
I think that was back when I was in elementary.
Because you have a really good handle on it right now. You really seem like you fully understand it, and I'm wondering how that came to be. How you got to this place where you really understand your autism.
And you're comfortable with it. How do you
Did your parents help you figure that out?
Yeah, I do. Well, when I have some sort of a problem, like a worry or something, I tend and it's like giving me a headache. I tend to like ask a question.
That's one of the bad parts of autism.
That's
is worries.
Yes, that's one of them.
Dad has worries too, but I don't have autism.
Not anymore.
I work on it.
My son stutters, and what advice could you give what helps you get your words out when you're stuttering? Because I don't know, what to tell him.
Well,
Take a deep breath.
if you're stuttering a little, I sometimes stutter, so I just tend to stop and think before I say my words.
Like calm down.
Take a deep breath and take a deep breath. Or if you don't want to take a deep breath, just like stop and think what were you gonna say, and for example, if he's stuttering a little and if he forgets to say his words, you could say you happen to forgot your words. Just tell me later, right?
Okay, thank you.
One thing I noticed though that you do when you kind of are stuttering,
And I'm stuttering a little also,
is you'll stop and say, especially if you don't know them, you'll tell them that you're autistic. I've noticed you do that a lot.
Yeah, of course.
You say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm autistic, and then you kind of take a break and then you keep going. I think that's great.
I just have to warn some people.
You should print up a shirt.
I'm curious how you got to be such an astoundingly wonderful yo-yoer. Do you remember the first time you tried? Was it hard to learn? How do you do that?
Heck yes. Back when I was in elementary, I had almost had no education. It took me like a year to learn how to just take it and have it go up and down.
How did you
I was very persistent.
That's it. Is that just how you are? You're really persistent?
Yeah, persistentness.
Tell them some of the things you've been persistent and taught yourself how to do.
Oh gosh.
I think of 3 biggies: yo-yos,
Juggling and plus juggling on the unicycle, and I happen to teach myself how to play my keyboards without Dad's help. I mean, I mean, when I was like reading the music notes, like reading all the music notes, I just like thought of math to go with it.
I refuse to believe that. There's no math.
That is math. That is math. When you're like, how many of you play music? Raise your hand. Well, when I play music and when I read the music notes, I thought of math like following the beats of certain songs or something. Doesn't that make sense? I mean, you get what I'm saying?
You relate to everything in math.
I mean, anything can be math. Movement, sound wave. Sound wave is actually part of math. Which speaking can be part of math, and shaking your water ball can be part of math. That's chemistry. Just mixing something in. Anything.
Can you tell me how you would explain autism to someone?
Yeah, I probably could maybe. I would explain autism that it's a different learning style. It's not always like abnormal, like what I used to have. It's a different learning experience. Down there?
First off, I would just like to thank both of you for being here and sharing a very personal but important story. I am a special ed class teacher, and from that angle, I would love to know what teachers have done that have really benefited you, and maybe what teachers have done that just like did not help you at all, and you hope the teachers would never do that to
Okay, so start with the things that were really helpful that teachers have done.
Well, my speech therapists, my talk doctors, they help me improve me a lot.
So your speech, right?
Yeah, my speech, my talk doctors, and my parents and my friends.
What about your learning style?
Learning style.
I mean, they teach you what's your best way of learning, because you're very aware of that.
I mean, my best way of learning is just picturing stuff in my head and actually doing it. I mean, like if I had like a recipe on how to bake a cake in the oven, there is math to do it. There's math to go with it. I mean, they tell you what measure. Yeah, I tend to think of math a lot.
So if I was your teacher and I sat here and I read this speech like I did tonight, that's not your best way of learning, is it?
No, not really, but I was listening. I knew what it's about.
You're going to be quizzed, Nick.
I was listening. I actually knew what it's about.
What's your best learning style? I'm trying to get you to...
Oh, learning style. Okay. My best learning style is visuality and kinesthetic. Visuality means like people learn by just seeing it. And let me back up a little. There are like three learning styles. There's visuality, there's auditory, and there's kinesthetic. So visuality, which happens to be me. Is learning by seeing things, and auditory that's the opposite of me, is just learning by hearing. And kinesthetic, which is also happened to be me, is learning by doing stuff. Let me give an example of visuality and yet auditory and kinesthetic.
Sure.
Okay. Visuality. Visuality learning. For example, visuality would be like I would just like watch a video like for example, if you're watching a YouTube video on how to play guitar or learning how to yoga, that's visual learning. And auditory, which is learning on is learning by hearing and listening, which happened, like for example,
What's happening right now.
what's happening right now, like you're listening to me, you're listening to him. And kinesthetic is learning by doing stuff, which I already said it earlier. Kinesthetic would be, like for example, if I were like, how do I put it this way? I can't explain. It's hard to describe it. So
I think maybe doing your tricks over and over again until you perfect them.
Doing stuff over and over again. Just like keep practicing and don't give up, and never giving up is kinesthetic.
Hi. Temple Grandin, your dad mentioned Temple Grandin. She invented this squeeze machine that soothed her when she became anxious. And I worked with a child who, when he was like in preschool, I guess, he would crawl into a big pillowcase, and that would, make him feel better. And I had another kid who would bounce on something, and that would make him feel better when he became anxious. Do you have a strategy that, makes you feel calm and soothed when you're becoming frustrated or anxious?
Yeah. Well, when I get frustrated, I just tend to take a break. Some people get frustrated and they throw stuff. That's not a way to handle things. Which I used to do, but well, for one thing, if you said something about going under a pillow or something and jumping on a bed,
or covering yourself up.
You could.
Is that
that can solve problems, and you can also go into your room and just hit pillows.
Hide under the blankets.
But jumping on a bed, that's not necessary. But you can go jump on a trampoline. Go jump on a trampoline, not on a bed.
Do you remember that time when Patty discovered winding you up on the swing and spinning, and how?
Oh, twisting it?
Yeah. That calmed him down.
Oh yeah.
She would wind him up and then make me vomit. But we don't do it anymore. But
well, you're talking about a ride or
well, no, it was. I don't even know if you're old enough to remember, but
yeah, I remember that.
that was calming.
Almost like going on a ride at an amusement park or a fair or something. I can ride any ride. I'm not too sensitive about rides.
How old were you, Ian, when you discovered that math was something that you could relate to and relate to others with?
I was about in 6th grade, so approximately 11 or 12. Wait, 10 or 11.
That's when it really started taking off.
Yeah.
He doesn't even study. What are you doing now, Cal?
I was never good at math all through elementary.
But you didn't have the coping skills for your autism yet.
No.
Once you learned how to control those challenges, then
I didn't even know how to multiply or divide yet back when I was in 6th grade. Yeah, it sounds kind of weird.
But once you found that math was kind of an outlet for you, that's when you became really interested in it?
Well, I thought what got me into math is when I actually when I saw it, I just thought I used to like puzzles back when I was a kid. Math, I thought, to me, what I believe is kind of like solving a puzzle. 9 times 2, 18. Just add 9 up 2 times. 9 plus 9.
Just shows in your head in that picture again.
Yeah. Or probably graphing like a graph on a coordinate plane. And of course, some of you may not know what it is.
That's why I teach kindergarten. Accounting. Any others?
I just wanted to share something. I was in algebra with you a couple semesters ago over at Yuba College, and Good job. Good job. You did really well.
Hey, thank you. You actually do look familiar.
She's kind of dark.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think you had me with math. Like, paid them?
Yeah.
More you look familiar.
Hi, Ian. I'm just curious to know a little bit more about your math skills. Like, is the formula or the repetitiveness that seems so familiar to you that makes it so easy for you to do math?
I can solve formulas. Yes.
My son has the same level. It's math. It takes no effort. So it's amazing to hear your side of that to help me understand him.
Yeah. Is your son autistic?
Uh-huh.
That's Milo.
Milo.
Oh, yeah, Milo. Yes, formulas, autistic people can like remember formulas. I mean, people who are diagnosed with autism, they can like do a lot of math. I mean, of course, well, some of them. I think I know like a few autistic people who are good with English.
It's just kind of
it's just math.
in there.
It's just in your head.
Yeah.
Because Ian's talking and Milo's counting. It's just fascinating.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's why I was.
Yeah. So mostly people who are autistic would definitely have the type advantage with math.
Do you continue as you've gotten older with the routines and the scheduling to keep more comfortable, or has that changed as you progressed?
Like, what are you saying?
Do you need a schedule?
Your dad was saying that as you were younger, that it was very good for you to stay on routines and become, kind of scheduled and regimented, that you liked that. And I'm just wondering, as you've gotten older, is that something that you find that you still do, or has that gone away?
Yeah, I still do schedules. I mean, it just helps me remember stuff.
Yeah, I don't think that'll ever go. I think that's.
Down there?
Yeah, do you have a type of photographic memories? Like, if it seems important to you, can you, record it because you can picture it?
Yeah, I could do that. Anything else?
We're good. Well, thank you everybody for coming.